Happy Mushoku Mondays, everybody. Welcome back to yet another trek through the Mushoku Tensei Jobless Reincarnation novel series. We are on now Chapter 5 of Volume 9. Yes, I finally have my Volume 9. 3, 7, and 9 shipped the other day, and they have all arrived. They're all safe, and I now have a complete collection of the currently released Mushoku Tensei series, and I could not be more excited. But no, that aside... Chapter 5 and Chapter 6, my gosh, I read those two chapters and I literally overanalyzed every single paragraph, it felt like. And so, even with only 2 chapters read, I figure it's time to record because, I don't know, we'll see how things go, but I think I'm going to pretty much take an entire Mushoku Mondays just on 2 chapters. Now, I'll probably throw in Sylphie's side story because at this point, I hate those chapters anymore. It's just like, here we go again. Here's Sylphie whining again. I am done with Sylphie. I'm sorry. I hope it pays off at the end of this volume, but dang, I am just so done with Sylphie at this point. I'm just tired of it. Does anybody feel me? I mean, I know most people just kind of blitz through a volume. I'm overanalyzing every chapter. Like I said, I'm pretty much doing the chapter-by-chapter release experience that they had originally with the web novel. That's kind of my experience, so probably not the same for most people, but by this next Sylphie side story, I'm just done. But no, 5 and 6 were absolutely incredible. And I was talking to some people on the Discord earlier today, talking about my favorite volumes, and this was already kind of going down as one of my favorite volumes of Mushoku Tensei. And I think a lot of my credit for the best volumes really goes, a lot of my weight to what is the best goes in realms of what shakes the foundation of the story. 6 was like that, and now 9 is like that. It's those volumes that when you read it, everything you've kind of established as the normal in the world breaks. And I love that stuff. I love when Rudius and his idea of the world just gets thrown up. And he's like, what? Wait, no, wait, this is how it's supposed to go. No, that's not how it's going. And that's why I'm loving it. And 5 and 6 was credit to that. And so I'm going to have a lot to go through. I'm going to have a lot of speculations. So anybody in the premiere, if I even do a premiere, at this point I'm really wondering if I want to do a premiere no matter what, even if I might not want to be there for the premiere. I want to be there for all of them, but some of them is like, I'm just afraid. I'm afraid of what I'm speculating about and how people are going to jump on there and say, no, you're wrong or you're right. We'll see though. We'll see. We might have to, we probably have shipped the schedule just so that we can make sure we have mods there to protect me. But yes, we'll see if we can get to this, but this has been a really fantastic volume so far, and I cannot wait to start diving into it because, again, the White Mask chapters, the crazy chapters. But as per usual, before I get into that, appreciate everybody who drops by for the premieres, if we have one. All those that leave comments, all those that hit the like button. If we even have comment sections turned on, it's probably going to be turned off. If the comments are ever turned off, it's because me and the mods pretty much decided most people can't handle not posting spoilers, and I'll see them on my comment feed, and then I don't want to get spoiled. So that's why they get turned off, is whenever we have a really juicy episode. But yes, either way, greatly appreciate the support. Those that share us out, those that spread the word of Mushoku Mondays, everybody that drops by and watches the videos, and yes, especially all those that support us on Patreon, our tips link, and those that are members of the channel itself. Greatly appreciate your guys' support. You guys mean so much to me. With that said, let's jump into Chapter 5, The White Mask of Volume 9. Recently, the students of the university were frightened of Rudius. Obviously, he just one-shot a Demon King, and he's got this little posse around him all the time. Everybody's terrified of him. Even tough-looking students avoid him as he walks down the hallways. He feels like it's almost like people are kind of, the seas are parting in front of him, as he mentions later on. He was honestly happy that people weren't hassling him. First, he realized this whole thing with Goliad. Yes, remember Goliad was the one that claimed that he was the Ponsu thief when Fitz dropped Ariel's Ponsu down. He ended up seeing her outside the classroom, and he's like, hey, I want to go kind of clear things up with Goliad, you know, explain things and kind of clear up this misunderstanding that we had. And the moment he walked up to her, she kind of shrunk up like she was trying to avoid him, and then he kind of confronted her and she just completely apologized in panic. It made him feel like he was intimidating her. And the nearby students were saying that he was bullying her. It really hurt him to hear those words. With this crowd kind of building up and everything, he suddenly hears, what's all this, nya? Somebody's got too much energy, huh? It was Linnea and Persenna pushing their way through the crowd. And yes, they obviously completely misread the situation. and they put themselves between Rudius and Goliad. Hey, boss, why don't you leave it at that, yeah? Goliad didn't mean to tick you off. Really? Couldn't you cut her a break for us? We have to look out for other beast folk girls. Go on, Goliad. You're fine. Just don't get on boss's bad side again. Got it? You were lucky his right-hand girl passed by. If it weren't for me, he might have chopped you up into mincemeat. Oh, okay. Thank you. The rest of you, get lost, yeah? This ain't a show. The crowd scattered. Rudius sighed in relief and turned to Linnea and Priscilla for an explanation. They were already going off on their trademark banter back and forth on who exactly was his right-hand girl. He really honestly didn't get the importance of it, but he was just grateful that they bailed him out of the situation. Now here is where I'm already starting to dig into this dang chapter. Honestly, when he first walked up to Goliad and she was terrified of him, I'm like, I know what they're going to do in here. I know exactly where this writer's going. He's going into the idea that suddenly everybody's going to see him as a bully because everybody's terrified of him. And so any interaction he has with somebody that's terrified of him, people around him are going to assume that he's a bully, that he's bullying them, even though he's just going to them to say, hey, can we talk? Yes, we'll talk. And every word that he's saying, they're just thinking it's intimidation, even though he's really honestly trying to be kind about it. And the sucky thing that happens here is, and it is fine. Like, this is one of those moments where I'm like, I don't like that Rudius is going down this road. But he's going down this road. Honestly, he doing this is being seen as a bully, and Linnea and Priscilla walk up and stand between them, and they immediately jump on the idea of, oh, well, that's our boss. Our boss is obviously intimidating, and she did something wrong, obviously, so we're going to tell our boss to chill out. He doesn't immediately try to correct the situation. When they say, let her off the hook, go ahead, Goliad, it's okay, he should have stopped and corrected then. No, you guys don't understand. I'm not attacking her. I want to come to an agreement and clear things up. He doesn't. Instead, and again, this is not me saying this is a fault of the writing or anything. This is perfectly fine the direction the writer's going. I hate that I have to correct this mentality every now and then. Instead, he's relieved. Why? Because he's not like me. He's not a backseat quarterback. He, in that moment, was upset. He was stiffened up because he's realizing everybody's surrounding him and saying that he's the bully, and they're gossiping about him, and he's freezing up. And it wasn't until they came in and basically told him to go away, it wasn't that they diffused the situation in a correct way. They didn't understand what he was saying. They completely misread the situation. He was just happy it was over. That's all he cared about. He didn't care that the situation wasn't resolved properly. He was just relieved that the situation was resolved. But it scares me here. I'm already scared here because Rudius is going down the path of being the bully. And he sort of gathers that from Linnea and Priscilla. He sort of accepts that mindset for the sake of his confidence. But we'll get into that as we get into it. But like I said, right here, I'm already like going, no, we're going down this route. We're already going down this route. But anyways, they asked what Goliad did. Like, what did she do to tick you off? Which he tried to explain, but they ended up cutting him off. They were shocked that he was the Phantom Pantsu Thief. Again, they didn't let him finish. Rudius honestly just told them he didn't want to make any trouble for Goliad. But Linnea and Priscilla felt they needed to conquer the school, even take down Ariel and own the dorms. They're getting high on this. Like, Priscilla and Linnea are getting like super into this idea. Everybody's terrified of you, boss. Let's take it all. Let's take it over. You have the power. Everybody's seen what you did. You can easily do this. He's basically going to facilitate what they wanted when they got there originally. Bad girls. But honestly, Rudius didn't see any point in claiming authority over everything. He was trying to avoid conflict where possible. Being in leadership only made people hate you. Just like what's happening with Ariel, right? And yes, he obviously equates it to his own life. In this world, walking down the wrong road at the wrong time led to you getting stabbed through the heart. It was best to be friendly and respectful to everyone you met. That was the easy road. Linnea and Priscilla even offered going around and getting a pair of Pantsu from every single girl every year. They figured he liked Pantsu. I mean, he kept one in his dorm. But he wasn't really into this. I mean, yes, he kind of liked Pantsu, but at the same time, he didn't like the idea of getting everyone's Pantsu. I mean, he even thought about Goliad. Do I want her Pantsu? No. But still, he was okay with getting a pair of Linnea and Priscilla's. They would have a unique smell to them. He said, I'm never going to get that. I'm never going to get that fetish. I mean, I'd be perfectly fine with Roxy's Ponsu, but I don't know. But he does realize that there's one person that wouldn't like him to have all these Ponsu, Master Fitz. He can't let down Master Fitz. It would cause trouble for Master Fitz. He couldn't do something like that. It just shows how much respect that he has for Fitz. He has way too much respect for him. In the end, Lenium Persimmon conceded to his desire not to cause trouble. In any case, he had an idea of the situation. He defeated Fitz, he tamed all the special students, he defeated a Demon King in one hit. It's no wonder the entire school found him intimidating. Barigati even told him that his battle aura couldn't be penetrated by anything less than a king level spell, or a sword technique, meaning only people around the level of Reserved and Ghislaine could even have a chance to fight Barigati. Since Barigati relied on his protection, he apparently had a hard time beating anyone above that level, which kind of gives us an indication that since that's like that's his key, like his ability to put on that battle aura, since that's his main key, he's not the best at fighting is what it's kind of indicating. All that said, this meant that Stone Cannon was now as powerful as a king tier spell. Which again, that's kind of something we talked about in the last Mushoku Monday, this idea of turning something and infusing so much mana and modifying it so much that it becomes a higher tier spell, which I think is really, really cool. It's sort of the idea, and again, this is my whole thing that I get with Refusion. This guy loves JRPGs, and I love JRPGs, and a lot of old school MMORPGs and stuff, and I just immediately think to something like, you know, an old school RPG where the lower tier spells, like Ultima Online, with that, I mean, you would even, in PvP, you would often use lower level spells because they were faster, and you can easily interrupt somebody. It's not to that point where it becomes so super overpowered in damage, but it's still the same idea. Which they sort of get into here. Whenever somebody tries to cast a higher tier spell, they'll cast a lower one to interrupt. I just love that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's very interesting here. I love that. I got a huge kick out of the fact that a comment in last Mushoku Monday was someone's like, you forgot to mention that his spell was at king tier level. I'm like, no, it was just that it was mentioned in chapter 5. Some people think that I purposely skip stuff, and they don't realize exactly when in the novel it actually says that. It's fine, I'm not mad, but be careful with your spoilers. Sometimes it's in that area, but not in that chapter. But yeah, it's very interesting, the idea that Barigati right here is technically admitting that somebody that is a king level or higher can technically beat him. They just have to get past his battle aura. That's his key protection. And like how later on, we'll start to get in that idea of, why doesn't he have a battle aura? Why doesn't Rudius get a battle aura? We're already seeing here technically that battle auras are a great protection. I mean, from the magician side, all we're really getting is a sense of barriers and stuff. But again, barriers are locked up in this monopolizing that the Millis Church is doing, or the Millis is doing. And battle auras seem to be kind of a general thing. Now, I'm not sure exactly how many mages use battle auras, but when we get an explanation of what battle auras are, you would think a lot of mages would want to use them, want to constantly be training while keeping up battle auras so that they're always kind of a secondary thing. They're always present. You're always keeping them on. So they're kind of second nature. Every time you do anything, it's second nature, your battle aura's on. Still, Rudius understood he was a glass cannon. Despite the fact that he was able to take down this Demon King, he is a glass cannon. Sword fighters could see themselves in a protective veil of a battle aura without thinking about it. But for Rudius, he could never gain superhuman strength and speed like Edis and Reserved. All Rudius had was attack power. Again, a glass cannon. For those that don't know the term glass cannon, I don't know how many people would. It's a RPG term, and this idea that you build a character up in having max damage. Don't put any points in defense. Don't even put any armor on that's going to help them defensively. Just armor and everything that will stat up your attack power. And you just blast things before they get to you. Your concern is not about defense. Like, if you blast something like a big Demon King and a rabbit comes up and hits you in the ankle, you're dead. That's the idea of a glass cannon. A cannon made of glass. Now, it's a kind of an odd term because a glass cannon technically would shatter from the blast that they shoot off, but the idea is that your defenses are nothing. Moving on, though. Even though he had a massive mana pool of a demon god and Eye of Foresight, against a powerful adversary, he had no chance. Of course, the students didn't know this. All they knew is that he blasted a Demon King. Not that his overall abilities and defensive were limited. Still, you gotta have more confidence in yourself, boss. I bet that would help you with the condition, yeah? Yep. Once you get that working, make sure you jump on Linnea instead of me. Rudius found this plausible. And this is where, the moment I read this, I'm like, no, Rudius, no, Rudius, no. Rudius found this plausible. He lost confidence while fighting Orsted, being dumped by Edis, and screwing up things with Sarah. Maybe he needed to take advantage of everyone being afraid of him. Use this chance to regain his confidence. With Priscilla and Linnea following him down the hallways, masses of bodies parted magically in front of him. He felt like a director of a hospital doing his rounds. It was his hallway. Out of the way, kids. He's becoming the bully. He's becoming the bully. Like, slowly but surely, Rudius is becoming what destroyed him. Congratulations, Rudius. But then, he stopped. What if the guys in his previous life started out this way? It instantly took all the fun away. Good job, Rudius. Good job, Rudius. Stopped himself. Whatever he had accomplished so far in his life, the fact was that he spent his entire last one at the very bottom of the totem pole. That was never going to change, even if his condition was cured. And if he forgot about it, he'd probably end up repeating the same mistakes he'd done before. Even if he had a positive outlook on life right now, he was still the same person deep down. Even to this point, he's still his old self. Found it interesting, even in Volume 9, he still has an inner appearance of his old self. I think for a while now, I've always kind of been curious at what point he would finally shed that. And obviously later on, we'll see how he still dredged it up again, but it's sort of him being completely reminded of everything, but he still holds on to it. Mainly the inner image, not his past memories, just his inner image of himself. He couldn't let himself forget that. He wasn't going to end up a shut-in this time around. Cutting once again to the library, he continued his research, keeping his focus on teleportation and summoning. The more he studied about them, the more he's seen similarities. While calling something is different than sending something, it had many respects that were comparable. More and more, he felt like he needed to make an effort to learn summoning magic. However, there wasn't a single person in the university that specialized in it. Genius boasting about this school, and it still doesn't have something that Rudius needs. Even the Magician's Guild, there was apparently mostly beginner and intermediate users. All they could call forth was harmless familiars and mindless obedient spirits. He wanted to learn from an expert, and we all know who that's going to be. I immediately knew, I just have an idea of who this was going to be right here. I immediately was like, this is going to be that masked figure. It's seriously going to be that masked figure. I don't know how, but I know it's going to be the masked figure. Nanahoshi. I just knew from this point it's going to be her. While yes, some folks in town rose to advanced tier in enchantment, it seemed very different than conventional summoning. He started to have doubts of the pedigree of the staff, despite the vice principal's bragging. Yes, he's starting to sound like Cliff right here. I think he's been hanging out with Cliff too much. All the professors here are useless. Though he never encountered somebody that specialized in summoning while adventuring, which I actually thought about this. I'm like, that's actually pretty interesting. The idea that he's traveled so much, he's technically never seen somebody that was a summoner. Like, I'd imagine at some point he'd be like, oh wow, one time when I was doing one quest with this random group because I was trying to spread the word of Quagmire, Rudius, some point I ran into this guy that summoned this familiar that went out and attacked things. Like, he never mentioned it. He considers at this point that it's possible that there wasn't many out there. Or maybe a country had a monopoly on it. Like, again, just like barrier magic, just like, you know, resistant bricks, all this kind of stuff. It's like, maybe at this point, Rudius would assume that. Maybe it's just another town that has the monopoly on it, just like always. They have the patent on it or whatever. Still, Rudius felt like he had met somebody at some point with summoning skills. He can't remember who. Maybe we'll come back to him if he ran into them again. Is this really flagging the idea of him running into Nanahoshi? Like, did he actually get a feeling that Nanahoshi knew summoning? Or is he possibly thinking about somebody else? I'm going to put a pin in that. I don't know. It could be both. Either it's Refugian being very cheesy with his flagging, or it could be that it's implying that he's possibly met somebody in the past that did know summoning. It was Rijerd, obviously. Rijerd's behind the displacement incident. We figured it out, everybody. We figured it out. Rijerd caused it. He went with Rudius and then swooped him up and acted like his friend and protected him, all to gain Rudius' favor. Biggest anime betrayal ever. Technically light novel. In season 2, it'll be the biggest anime betrayal. All that said, yes, once again, Rudius has run into a dead end. He says that like every single volume and every chapter, I think, at this point. He had already read through all the most promising books. But then, Fitz found a way forward. I finally found somebody, Rudius. There's one person who's researching summoning magic at an expert level. Oh, really? Yeah, I found out about them from the principal and vice principal, actually. Fitz gave a slightly mischievous grin. Who do you think it is? Rudius thought it might be somebody in the Magician's Guild using the facilities, which was true. It was apparently somebody that was an A rank in the guild. Rudius sort of equated an A rank to sort of like a branch manager. Someone that was S rank in the guild would pretty much be someone in central leadership. Side note, apparently the principal is an S rank and the vice principal is B rank, which B wasn't so bad. You could start up your own school and the guild would even offer you financial support. So, who is it then? Well, I think you probably know their name already, at least. Come on, tell me already. Okay. It's a secret. It's a secret. It's a secret. Now I'm actually just triggering myself. Anyways. Okay then, it's Silent 7-star from the special class. Finally time to meet Silent. Rudius had already heard that name before. Also, yes, there are many accomplishments at the school. Arranging supplies from Asura, like ingredients, and improving the menu with things like curry soup, and they worked with designers to create the uniforms. Honestly, the idea of having a universal uniform at the school kind of helped the school to present itself as a singular group, giving it a common purpose, and improving its image. They even introduced the blackboards that were in the classrooms. There were many smaller achievements throughout the entire school that was recognized by the Magician's Guild, granting them a high rank status. And yes, I like that this isn't like, Rudius is not completely oblivious to this. It's one of those moments where you keep seeing this stuff and you're like, come on, Rudius, you gotta have a hint already. No, at this point he goes, look guys, I know, I'm not dumb, I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed, but this didn't all escape me. Yes, he had his suspicions of the origin of Silent. Everything he introduced was similar to Rudius. Yes, most people, this is new stuff, this is creative, this is inventive. But yes, Rudius here is acknowledging to the reader, yeah, I'm seeing that this is all the same. Rudius hadn't voiced his suspicions until now, and he didn't know why. He thought maybe it's because he wanted to feel special. But there was no reason for Rudius to think that he was the only person with memories from another world. He's not special. And honestly, he was very frightened to meet Silent. He had been actually avoiding the idea of ever meeting the person. And here's the key thing. He didn't want to meet somebody that had the same advantages of him that made much better use of them. Again, he's acknowledging already right now, I knew from when I found out what Silent was doing that this had to be somebody that probably had knowledge from a previous world. They're introducing a lot of modern concepts to this world, things that are very similar to him. But the key thing is here is that that person with that same knowledge that Rudius has been successfully executing with it and making a lot of money, building up the Remet group and all that kind of stuff, securing all this money and securing all these innovations. Rudius hadn't done anything with it. Technically, again, the only thing that we've sort of implied that he has utilized his knowledge was his spellcasting and combining magics itself. But again, we've already sort of, squashed out the idea that it's that knowledge that allowed him to do silent casting. It did give him easier knowledge and easier way of explaining combining magic. And additionally, outside of that, it's really him utilizing his knowledge it's made him clever, much more clever than most people. That's why he's shocked a lot of people in how he acts. And people thought that he was a halfling at times because he was so smart, he was adult. But he hasn't really done any achievements. But yes, he was afraid that this silent person might ask him why he's wasting his time playing around when he could have accomplished much, much more. And he realized that it would hurt if he heard that. But after hearing Fitz speak Silent's name, he decided it was time. He thought maybe he had gotten cocky. After all of his boosted confidence lately, maybe this Silent couldn't turn their nose up at him. Right here, this is kind of one of those dumb moments where he's like, well, the whole school's afraid of me, and I just achieved taking out this Demon King. I've gained all these spells. I have this massive mana pool. I'm special. This person couldn't turn their nose up at me. I've achieved things. I took out a red worm. I'm great. Nope, it's not gonna help him. But yes, Rudius talked to Genius. He informed Rudius that Silent was granted use of a laboratory and said that they spent most of their time up there and they rarely emerged. Arriving there, Rudius took in a deep breath and then knocked. Come in. There was a tinge of irritation in their voice. He opened up the door and he's seen massive amounts of strange magical implements of unclear purposes everywhere. Magic stones and crystals laying in heaps. Someone sat near the back. When they turned to face Rudius, he was struck speechless. Ah, we meet again. It was the black-haired woman wearing the mask he vividly remembered. A smooth and nearly featureless white mask. Rudius immediately fled from the room and screamed in terror. It was the woman with Orsted. His mind in a panic state, all he could do was think about the name Orsted, crying out in his mind, why Orsted? He wanted to meet another reincarnation, but why? Why was it Orsted? Anything but Orsted. I like he's talking about the fact that his mind is so jumbled up and he's in such a panic state that he's literally calling her Orsted. Why is she Orsted here? Why is Orsted here? He's that frantic right now. I love, again, how the writer will sometimes put these moments of insanity into the mind of the character by doing these twisted things with how he perceives names and what he attaches names to. It's really clever. Images of Rudius being killed flooded back into his mind. It overwhelmed him. The pain of his lungs being crushed. The feeling of helplessness while his attacks were being brushed aside. His heart being pierced. Death staring him in the face. He ran and ran and ran. When he turned around, she was following him. He thought that, is she like this fast? Why hadn't he gotten away? However, she wasn't fast. He was just really slow. He ran more, stumbling like a drunkard. His legs weren't cooperating with him. They wobbled weakly underneath him. I'm really gonna love seeing this animated because it's just, I'm already getting a vivid image of it. This idea of him just going, he's just frantically and he's thinking about all this stuff, and then he realizes he's not getting anywhere because he's just fumbling in terror. His body isn't working right because he's so afraid. He's trembling that much. Again, he's having a PTSD moment. He's literally reliving death. As she came up close to him, he realized, I faced a demon king, but yet he looked down the stairs to see Fitz. He thought to himself, Fitz will help me. Suddenly, Rudius relaxed, but only slightly. Then the masked woman tapped him on the shoulder. You shouldn't scream at the sight of someone's face, It's a little rude. Rudius screeched before falling down the stairs and knocking himself unconscious. When Rudius awoke, his head was being struck gently. It was deeply comforting. It was Master Fitz. His hand was soft, slender, and feminine. He almost assumed that it was maybe a healing spell was being applied to him. Oh, you're awake, Rudius. You really worried me there, falling down a whole flight of stairs all of a sudden. I was having a terrible dream. A woman in a white mask was just about to murder me. Rudius was in the infirmary. He looked around until he spotted the woman. She was there, the masked woman. He screeched again and fell off the bed. So very rude. Why are you terrified of me anyways? I saved your life last time, didn't I? Or, wait, you were nearly dead, weren't you? I guess you wouldn't remember me. Rudius realized it was definitely her then. Where's Orsted? He's not here. He's a very busy man, I wouldn't worry about him anyways. He won't be coming after you anytime soon. Anytime soon? Does that mean he'll get around to killing me eventually, or what? I don't think he has any plans to do so, but the possibility does exist. It all depends on you. I like right here, Rudius doesn't really kind of attach to it, other than the fact that when he hears this, he's like, okay, well, at least he's giving me time. I can be, I can sigh relief right now because at least I know I'm not dying now. Yes, maybe that just kind of gives this indication that Rudius is very short-term thinking, but at least he knows he's not dying right now. At least he knows he's not come after him. But me, when I read this goes back to my theories that I was developing around the 6th volume when the encounter with Orsted happened. He doesn't want to kill Rudius. Rudius is an anomaly. And yes, they'll mention later on the idea the reason why he killed him is because he's seen you as an anomaly and he knows that crushing anomalies is very important. Yes, technically part of it is because God and he's his arch rival, whatever. But it sort of implies here that, as long as you don't get in the way of Orsted's plans, I don't think Orsted cares. Like, as long as you're not in his path, as long as you're not doing something that is going to stop what he's doing, he doesn't care. That's what she's saying. It all depends on you. Yeah, the possibility exists. If you got in his way, he's going to kill you. I mean, she's not giving him a guarantee that Orsted won't kill him. At this point, Fitz wanted an explanation. Wanted to know who Silent was, what their relationship was, and what she did to Rudius. Rudius seen Fitz as like a protective upperclassman. Last time we met, he was beaten rather badly by the Dragon God. I imagine he was remembering that. The Dragon God? One of the 7 great powers? That's right. Are you the Dragon God? Of course not. We just traveled together for a while. Still, I didn't expect to meet you here, but maybe that's just the nature of this route. That encounter at the Red Worm's lower jaw set a flag for us to find each other at the school. I just get a kick out of the fact that they have to throw these stupid flag things in here. It's like, it's such a Japanese visual novel thing. So I'm guessing this chick probably checks out a lot of visual novels, like shoujo, villainous route type stuff. At this point, the woman pulled out a piece of paper and handed it over to Rudius. I'm going to ask you 3 questions. Answer them honestly, please. First of all, do these look familiar to you? The words Shinohara Akito and Kuroki Satoshi were written on the piece of papers in Japanese. Rudius at this point realized that his hunch was correct. Then the woman spoke in Japanese. Daini ni watashi no ite iru koto ga rikai dekimasu ka? No, I'm just joking. She said, in Japanese, she said, second, can you understand what I'm saying? Third, which of these 2 are you? Oh, I immediately jumped on this so freaking fast. Here's where everything starts happening. So if you remember, way back in Volume 1, there was a girl. And she's standing on the side of the street. And there was 2 boys with her. And they were arguing. And Rudius ran out there to try to save them, and the truck hit. Now, this is where I really, really kind of hate that I ever watched the anime before I read all this stuff. Now, granted, this is the last of the things that I think the anime spoils for me, unless I'm forgetting something else that I'll probably realize later. The one thing I said when I first started reading the first volume of Mushoku Tensei is I realized really quickly, wait, why did the anime adapt this scene like this? The anime added 2 things. They added a very important line, and they showed something. In Volume 1, it's Rudius. He sees them, runs out there, goes to stop them, truck crushes him, wakes up in a new world. In the anime, he jumps out there, gets hit by the truck, and then they show this boy sitting in the back of the ambulance, and the police radio is saying they're looking for 2 people. They were missing 2 people. So it's already implying here that possibly the girl, which at this point I'm pretty much confirmed that it's going to be Nanahoshi. Now, Rudius is implying that it's her, doesn't want to say that he might know her, doesn't want her to confirm it because then it would confirm that who he is, and we'll get into that later on. But again, assuming 100% here, we have implied and successfully confirmed that Nanahoshi is this girl that was on the side of the street. There was 2 boys with her. Those 2 boys would be Shinohara and Kuroki. And she's trying to find them. So she, assuming Rudius is an isekai, is handing this paper to him and saying, in Japanese, do you understand what I'm saying? Which of these 2 are you? So she's confirming 2 things right now. Can you read this? Do you know what I'm saying? And that immediately will tell her everything. Like, she can go around to all the people of the world, because it's going to talk about the fact that she went around and looked for her friends and stuff. While she was looking for a way to summon back or get back to her other world, she was looking for her friends too. She assumed, I got here. It's a possibility that the 2 that were with me got here too. It's a logical conclusion. If I got here, they probably did too. There's no reason why they didn't teleport too. So the way that she's been finding out if somebody was one of them 2 is by going around the world that nobody knows what it says unless you're Japanese. Nobody knows what she's saying unless they're Japanese or speaks Japanese. So she's going around saying, do you know what I'm saying? And is one of these 2 people you? And that will tell her immediately if they go, yeah, I know what you're saying. Okay, you speak Japanese. Which one? It's a really cool method that she's going around doing this. And she's apparently been doing this a long time because she has this down pat. And now, again, she's assuming the possibility that Rudius is one of those 2 boys. But she doesn't realize it was this other guy, which she might not even have seen him. That's going to be the funny thing as we get further into this, and he's afraid of saying who he is. He's afraid of what he looked like. I don't want her to know that I was this disgusting fat guy. He's afraid that she'll mock him for it. Like, he's still stuck on how disgusting he was in his previous life. It's like, get over it. It's hard for him to get over it. It's not easy. I have accepted that I'm not the prettiest person in the world. Rudius can't accept it. Rudius doesn't want people to know who he was. And so if even for her, he doesn't want to let her know. Still, that's what I think is going on right here. Because she'll confirm it later on that she's been looking for her friends, but I think this is what she's doing it. She's asking if one of these 2 guys is him. That's the 2 boys. So I'm curious at some point, And again, I hate the fact the anime pretty much spoils this. Now, granted, the radio signal could have been wrong on the anime. But again, the anime is implying much more than the novel did. The anime is already pretty much confirming, seemingly, it's confirming the possibility that, yeah, one of these two people is in this world. At this point, Rudius realized she was like him. But yes, the names weren't him. He then hesitated, and then he replied to her, speaking in Japanese. I'm neither of them. I don't recognize these names. I see. But you do speak Japanese at least. Fitz suddenly spoke up. Huh? What language are you two speaking, Rudius? He replied, the two of us share the same homeland, that's all. What? That can't be right. Rudius was unsure why Fitz felt so confident about this, but he wasn't too concerned about that at the moment. Like, yes, Fitz is going, wait, Rudius, you're not from the same homeland. You're from my homeland, Rudius. You're from my homeland, Rudius. Or it could be Fitz knows that Rudius is from Buena Village and that he knows perfectly that there's no person named Nanahoshi from that village. Who knows? I'm just done with that whole thing anymore. I just want them to answer it and let's move on. I'm just tired of, like I said, I'm tired of Sylphie. I'm tired of Fitz at this point. So, you're like me then. That's right. I was tossed in this world out of nowhere without warning. At this point, she took her mask off. It was a face of a girl that Rudius seen fighting with the boy. He immediately recognized her face. It was odd though, because she didn't look different at all, despite, yes, that all these years have passed. But if she was a reincarnate, she should have been born a new body, just like Rudius. I don't know how I was transported to this nightmarish world, but I'm stuck here for now. If Rudius understood her correctly, apparently she had transported in her same body, same age. She wasn't reincarnated. She wasn't given a new body. Now, this is very, very interesting because I think my original theories was this idea that she was transported and Rudius was just caught up in it. But not that his entire body was caught up into it, only his soul. He died and his soul was dragged along with her. But the question that we'll come up to in the next chapter is why at that time? It's like it's like Refugio starts giving you answers and then he goes, but I'm going to create a new question. I'm going to create a new question. My name is Nanahoshi Shizuka, and I'm Japanese. I've been using the name Silent Seven Star lately, though. Where were you from, anyways? America? Or maybe Europe? You're obviously Caucasian, but you speak Japanese. Is one of your parents Japanese? Or maybe you're a foreigner who lived there? Yes, at this point, she's making the wrong conclusion. She's assuming that the body that he's in was the one that he was transported into. She doesn't realize that he was 100% Japanese. Rudius didn't reply. He was tongue-tied at this point. In any case, this is clearly an important step forward. I was right to let you live. I suspected something like this the moment Orsted said he didn't recognize you. Even she, at that point, she's been traveling with Orsted, which we'll find out. She knew that he had the ability to see things. See, like, the present and the future and whatnot. And the fact that Orsted didn't recognize him, she probably realized at that point, wait, he said the same thing. Probably at the moment that she was teleported there, he probably said the same thing. I don't know who you are. Who are you? You're not. You. Who are you? I don't recognize you. You're not in my visions. And so she realized, oh, he's saying the same thing to him that he said to me. At this point, Rudius realized that she's speaking really rapidly. Like, she's got a hint of excitement. At no time did she recognize that Rudius was just stuck in bewilderment. Well, let's see if we can find a way to work together. What's your name? Rudius. I'm Rudius Greyrat. That's just a false name you're using, right? I mean, your actual name. He didn't want to speak the name that he was using in his previous life. He really, really didn't. Ah, that's right. I understand. You're wary of me, right? I can certainly understand that, especially after all that happened in our last meeting. Don't worry, though. We're on the same side. Still, I didn't think there was anybody here like me until now. You're the first other person from Earth I've met in this world, you know. It's kind of comforting. Nanahoshi grasped Rudius' hand. Fitz frowned, of course. Let's find a way back to home together, okay? Suddenly, Rudius, in an instant. Again, this entire time, he's stuck in bewilderment. He did say his name, but he didn't want to say anything else. He was, honestly, right now, it's like everything's flooding in his mind of the possibilities here, but additionally, his fears of speaking his old self. This moment that she said that, the moment that she says, let's go home, his mind cleared up. Instantly, in his mind, he says, hell no. He knocked her hand away. I never want to go back to that world again. Suddenly, Silent, who's been pretty much jabbering on this whole time, went quiet. Fitz spoke up. Rudius, Silent, would you two please talk in a language that I can understand? The mood in the infirmary was extremely awkward. And that's chapter 5. My gosh, I don't even know if I'm gonna get to these 2 chapters. I guess I'm doing okay so far. Let's just jump right into chapter 6 because everything I want to talk about is really in there. It just keeps getting juicy. These 2 chapters, my gosh. Apparently Nanahoshi had explained her name, Nanahoshi Shizuka. It literally means 7 stars and silent in Japanese. So clever. And that's pretty much what it's kind of indicating here. Is later on we'll find out that she's been traveling around and making a ton of money and meeting a lot of people as Nanahoshi. And so when she finally goes to do her research, she wants to do it without any sort of bother from the outside world. If she came in there and started doing some crazy stuff as Nanahoshi, she's going to get unwanted attention. So she makes up this new name of Silent 7-Star. Now, it implies, or at least Rudius kind of figures, the reason why she probably chose to be called Silent 7-Star is that in case one of these 2 that isekai'd with her were traveling around, they learned the language, eventually they seen Silent 7-Star, they would know, I wonder if that's Nanahoshi Suzuka, because it literally means 7-star silent. After Nanahoshi had explained to Rudius that she appeared in this world in her own body, Rudius revealed his story to her. That he was involved in an accident. He didn't want to explain exactly what happened in that accident because, again, he doesn't want her to know who he is. He got involved in an accident, and he was born in this world as a baby. Yes, he found that his old self was hideous, and he was afraid that she would change her opinion of him if she remembered what he looked like. Again, he knows what he was, and he finds it to be disgusting. And this goes back to whenever he was meeting with the man god. He's seen his hideous self, and it dredged up his old memories, and he didn't like it. It made him feel disgusted what he was. And the thought of this lady in front of him, knowing or seeing him and going, oh, you were that thing? Oh, that's what he's terrified of. And so he doesn't want to say it. And there's a good chance that she probably never did see him or would even remember him by that split second. Now, granted, when something really impactful happens in your life, sometimes you get a snapshot in your mind and you know it vividly. And just like the fact that he knows who she was based on her taking off her mask, he only seen her for a split second, but he recognizes her because that moment, snapshot in his brain. Additionally, yes, he did have a thought that it could have been his fault that she was there. And he didn't really want her going after him if she found out. Again, this was this point where he's still thinking that he's the center of this whole thing, and that possibly he was at fault for her coming there. He got transported, and she got sucked with him. At this point, they were still talking Japanese, which probably meant that Fitz was extremely bored. Nanahoshi made a declaration early on. I'm not interested in this tedious world. I don't plan to use my knowledge to make it flourish, like some ridiculous manga or light novel. I'm acting solely on my own benefit. All I care about is getting home as quickly as possible. The exact opposite of Rudius. And here's where things start flooding in for Andrew. I love this idea. I love this concept. What we're pretty much presenting here from a story-wise telling point is direct opposites. And I love that it kind of digs into it more later on, so I'm probably jumping ahead here, but that's fine. Whatever, it's my video. I'll do what I want. Yes, Rudius' perspective. Let's follow Rudius' story. Shut in, deadbeat, neat, has nothing going for him, gets kicked out of by his family, was bullied when he was young. He had nothing. Everybody hated him. He hated life. He's walking down the street. Truck-kun strikes. He gets isekai to this other world, and immediately he's born in this world. Doesn't know what it is. It's technically not a modern world. Doesn't have all the niceties of his past life, but still, he's away from everything he hated. He met Roxy, and it gave him purpose. He met this family. At some point, he thinks, I want to make this life different. All this experience with Roxy pushes him out to go out into the world itself. Everything that's happened, he's grown to love this new life. This was his new chance. He wants to make a new life. That's why he slaps away Nanahoshi's hand. No, I'm happy here. Go back. Reverse. Back to the point of the truck. She's arguing with somebody, gets hit by the truck, teleports to this new world, and it's nothing like her previous life. And she hates it. She has to learn a new language. She wants desperately to get back because she liked her previous life. She liked that. This world is unrefined, has no niceties, doesn't even have shampoo. Now, she creates shampoo, but she still hates it. It doesn't have anything she used to have. In this old life, she has family, maybe a boyfriend, maybe that guy that she was yelling at was a boyfriend. She had a life here, family and everything. Unlike Rudius, she wants to go back. These are direct opposites. Had no life, hated everybody. Has a life, had loved ones. To a new world. Rudius has mana, he has magic, he enjoys it, he wants to build new life, he's got girls that he's getting with, he's having all the experiences, all this fun, yes, hardships. But overall, he's had a great time there. He likes this new world. She hates it. She can't stand it and wants to go back. I love how opposite these two are. And I love the fact that at some point he points out the fact that she has all this stuff shoved in this room and she has like food next to her bed. He's like, this girl is literally neat. Again, they're opposites. She had everything. He was a neat. She's now a neat. He has everything. I love it. I love the opposite here. It's so cool. And yes, I think it's cool that eventually it turns into kind of an odd pairing. They're working together for the same goal, but it's because he wants knowledge and she wants a way out. They found a common denominator to work with each other. And slowly, especially over this chapter, unravel the mysteries of what's happening here. Now, despite her calling this world tedious and not interesting, he understood how she felt. She didn't fit in, and he had no plans of correcting her point of view. Still, at this point, Rudius does realize that she is wary of him. He thought he had messed up by refusing to cooperate earlier, and feels that because of that, she's hiding things. Now, here's where we get to the interesting stuff. Apparently, Nanahoshi had originally appeared somewhere in the kingdom of Asura, right in the middle of an empty field. Then, Orsted showed up and took her under his protection. She didn't know why he was there, but he eventually brought her to the university. But that's for later. However, during her time in the kingdom of Asura, she learned about the world, the local languages, basics of magic, the economy, and lifestyles. Amazingly, she learned human tongue in a year. Of course, Rudius figures that she probably had to blitz to learning it because, yes, everybody hated Orsted because of his curse. All in all, she spent 2 years in Asura. In that time, she earned enough money with knowledge in cuisine and clothing to obtain power, then create reliable streams of passive income. She secured connections with powerful Asuran merchants to arrange distribution routes for her products. And yes, she told people the Dragon God, one of the 7 great powers, was backing her. It's a really good way of getting people to work with you. At this point, she had enough money to live a life of luxury. But again, this was all stepping stones for her. Stepping stones to get back where she belonged. She didn't want this stuff, she just needed this stuff. At this point, she then traveled with Orsted for a year, all around the world, researching how she could return and for her 2 acquaintances that could have possibly came over here with her. Every foe that they ran into, Orsted would instantly fell. Yes, Rudius was one of them. But she felt something unusual about him and advised that he revive Rudius. Rudius spoke up. I have to ask though, what's Orsted's issue with the man god? I was really startled when he just attacked me like that. I don't know the details, but it sounded like they had a feud going on. Also, he said it was best to take out man god's apostles quickly because they caused all sorts of trouble if you let them run wild. I find this statement very, very interesting. He doesn't say that man god's apostles are doing something that I don't want. He's literally saying they caused trouble. That again, it sort of implies the man god isn't the good guy. Why would he say something like this in this way to Nanahoshi? I can see him saying something like that to Rudius if he was trying to deceive Rudius, but he has no reason to deceive Nanahoshi. He's protecting her and they're just traveling around. He could easily say, I'm planning on destroying the world and he's gonna get in the way. He's literally just saying they're trouble. Can't let them run around. Again, it implies this idea that the man god probably isn't good, and the apostles that he's left out and the apostles that he's had before have caused trouble. Of course, Rudius in his mind is thinking to himself, I was never his apostle. I was just doing what he was telling me to do, and we just seen each other once every year or so. I wasn't even close to the guy. Anyhow, Nanahoshi and Orsted traveled across the world and met all sorts of people. Using his name properly was very useful. A single letter signed by the dragon god got her meetings with the most famous of mages, high-ranking knights, and even monarchs. Again, that name The name of the dragon god really does kind of hold a little weight. And yes, it's the point where Rudius speaks up. You made it around the world in a year? It took Rudius 3. Yes, we used a special method to travel though. What kind of method? Warping devices, basically. In this world, they call them teleportation circles. Have you heard of them? Again, this is the thing that way back there on the Deviant Continent, Rudius was going, hey, Regierd, aren't there like teleportation circles? We can just teleport over there? Well, no, they're illegal. You're not allowed to use them. Well, Orsted's been around for a while, and he knows exactly where they're at, and he could find them and use them. Rudius replies, I recognize the name, but that's about it. Wait a second, though. Weren't all those destroyed centuries ago? There are some that survived intact. They're hidden inside ruins that date back to the Human-Demon War. No kidding. Where can I find these ruins? I can't tell you. Orsted asked me to keep them a secret. It's a secret. Shut up, Andrew. Teleportation is apparently a forbidden form of magic, so he didn't want me talking about them too carelessly. Ah, got it. In any case, I was just tagging along with him. I don't even remember where most of them were exactly. Which, yes, Rudius kind of acknowledges if she were to go with him into one of these teleportations and they were just brought somewhere, she wouldn't know where she went to. I mean, it's very plausible that she has no clue where these things are at. Still, he kind of wishes that he can find where at least one of them are at, because you never know when you'll need to travel halfway across the world. Flag. At some point, Rudius is going to really need to get across the world really quickly, and hopefully he can find one. Along her meetings, she eventually found one person that said, someone may well have summoned you into this world. Rudius asked, who told you that exactly? I can't say. They asked me not to tell anyone I'd met them. Why's that? It's for my own safety. Should people learn that you met me, you'll find yourself plagued by swarms of greedy, power-hungry jackals. You'd be wise not to mention my name to anyone if you'd prefer to avoid that, in their words. Apparently, this mysterious, unnamed individual was a world-class authority on summoning magic, but they didn't know how a living person from another world could be summoned. I mean, even putting aside the another world aspect of it, they literally don't know how to summon a human being. Having something to work off of, she set her base in the Renoa University of Magic to study summoning. She donated an enormous amount of money to earn B rank with the Magician's Guild. She used her connection with Asura to get uniforms and apply various improvements. She arranged for a long overdue reformation of the curriculum and the teaching tools. This all earned her A rank with the guild. They even offered her S rank if she shared her research, but she turned it down, obviously. She apologized before repeating herself. I'm not remotely interested in reforming this world for the better, or climbing my way to the top. She never made anything that she herself wouldn't use, nor did she provide those things to other people. Yes, this was cold-hearted in Rudius' eyes. Like, you could cure so many things. You can create these niceties in this world. You can make AC and stuff. Why not improve things in this world? You can make this world so much more pleasant to live in. And seeing his face, she sensed this. She sighed. Look, we don't really belong in this world, right? If we try to change its history too dramatically, we might end up getting ourselves erased. Erased? What are you talking about? Haven't you ever read any science fiction? What if there was some kind of cosmic force that tries to keep events moving down a proper line? Is there anything like that here? I have no idea. It can't hurt to be careful, though. She's sort of getting in this mindset of this idea of this predetermined path. And if you mess things up too much, you're changing too much stuff, the universe itself, its laws, will erase you from existence. Yes, like I mentioned earlier, she started researching under the name of Silent Seven Stars. We get a little insight into what she's kind of learned about summoning magic, that summoning magic relied on learning about magic circles. While more dramatic magics like elemental and healing mostly used incantations, you needed circles for static magics like barriers and summonings. Most of her info came from books and records. Now here is more juicy stuff. I freaking love this section so much. This is, again, another one that got me like going, holy crap, I love this stuff. Nanahoshi says, the people of this world are very set in their ways, you know? I suppose it makes sense given the harshness of their environment, but I'm looking to do something totally unprecedented. So I can't expect anyone to teach me much. At this point, Rudius questioned himself. He learned everything about magic from people of this world. He wasn't looking to achieve anything revolutionary like Nanahoshi was. I like this part because it's sort of feeding into what we've seen so far. Say, for example, Sylphie. What did Sylphie say when she was talking about her classes? She went in there and they were talking about combining magics, and it didn't make much sense. Like, they were just saying, you do this, and they don't really know why it happens. And she notes there that Rudius explain it so much better. And then what we get from all this other stuff that we were throwing in here. The fact that Rudius thought that you couldn't build up your mana pool. The fact that Rudius thought that anybody can learn silent casting. All these things that Rudius, through his experience, he's seeing that the world itself doesn't really know about. And they perceive things wrong. Again, he thought that your mana pool was set. He didn't realize the time that you could build it up. The world itself doesn't know about these limits. And she's saying right here, these people are set in their ways. It's almost as if knowledge of magic and the advancements of magic has become stale. In the opening ceremony, when Rudius arrived here, specifically the principal said something that I think is possibly a tribute to what she is applying to curriculum. Again, it mentioned the fact that she tried to update the curriculum, help them out. And I'm wondering if it's possible that that has sort of fed into the principal himself. They want to advance things. Swordsmen have always kind of ruled battle, but we're different. It sort of implies that, yes, we want to get stronger so that we can face them, but more of the idea that magic can be used for multiple things. It can be used for so much more than just destroying. And I'm wondering if a part of that is sort of fed into the principle in that mindset. But again, the overall concept here is that there's these normalities that are set in stone. They're written in textbooks. And over time, Rudius has learned they're wrong. And even Sylphie has pointed out that they're wrong, or they don't understand it fully. But Rudius here is acknowledging that he hasn't tried to do anything revolutionary. And as we'll find out later on, we'll find out the world itself hasn't. And that they've improved things, like they've improved incantations, like they've shortened them. Like he'll talk about later that there's these long spells and they've sort of been trying to slowly shorten them so they're faster. But even later spells are still extremely long. But even things like summoning circles and magic circles, there's a lot of them it's a lost technology. Unless people spoke it to somebody else and taught it to somebody else, it wasn't wrote down. And there's so much technology that's almost lost, barely any of it improved, but especially from Nanahoshi's perspective, nobody's advancing. Nobody's changing things. Nobody's creating new things. It's like the world is stagnant. And I almost wonder if there's a reason for that. And again, that feeds into what he said earlier, that he knew Silent was doing incredible things. And that's why he was afraid of meeting Silent, because he was afraid that she'd turn and say, "What have you done?" Thankfully, I don't think she cares. She doesn't want to improve the world anyways. She's just doing it as a means to an end, to get money, to get more content and research and materials, because she needs a lot of materials, as we'll see in this next sentence. She needs a lot of materials, and so she had to do this stuff. She had to gain status and a position and money. But yes, this was a little bit of a shocker. Nanahoshi said, and of course, we don't have any mana. It gets frustrating when they're trying to constantly assuming that you do. Riri says, what? What? Did I say something odd? Well, I've got mana, actually. I can cast magic just fine. In fact, just the other day, somebody told me that I have a world-class mana capacity. I see. I suppose you're different because you're a reincarnate. My mana capacity is apparently 0. Interesting. I mean, it makes sense. She was transported in the same body. She was a human. Our world doesn't have mana. Our world doesn't have magic. So her being transported in her body, unless somebody injected mana into her, she's not going to have mana. Rudius, his spirit went into a body, and that body has mana capability. Everything in this world contains some degree of mana. Even corpses have a little. But we came from a world where it doesn't exist. So I thought it made sense for me to lack it. In that case, I suppose this doesn't apply to you either, does it? She then removed her mask again. It was strange to see a Japanese face after all this time. She wasn't a supermodel or anything, and by the standards of a lot of the beauties that Rudius has seen in this world, she doesn't amount to much. But she was probably one of the cutest in her classes back in Japan. Now here's the next. Again, I was saying, when I was reading this, like every single paragraph is like, holy crap, I gotta talk about this. It's been about 5 years since I arrived in this world, but I haven't aged at all. Okay, let's start with the first part. Yes, it technically counts up. I mean, if you were keeping track of the 2 and I think 3 years it mentioned, or whatever, a year or 2 years, whatever, yes, it's pretty much counted up the fact that she has been in this world for 5 years. She hasn't been in this world for 16. She arrived, and it kind of indicates it in the idea that she was in an empty field. It sort of also implies in the idea that Orsted, when he was traveling around and he's seen the mana from the displacement incident, it didn't imply that he had anybody with him. And yes, technically the anime doesn't show her with him. It implies that yes, she arrived because of the displacement incident. She didn't arrive with Rudius. Now, there's a lot of things that could be answered here, but let me focus here. Which, yes, means that my theories before and the idea that the displacement incident could have been a summoning. Somebody was summoning somebody. Was it Nanahoshi that was summoned at that time? Or was it somebody else and she just got caught up in it? Is it one of her friends that was what the intended summon was? Or was it her that was the intended person to be summoned? Or again, was she just wrapped up in it? The curious thing about this is why that she arrived 10 years after Rudius. So the accident happens, Rudius dies, and she is teleported, her whole body and everything, and age and everything. He gets swept up with her as a spirit because he died. How does that happen at that point? Because the assumption here is that I have like two assumptions here. One theory is that she was transported to this new world, and she was in that orb, the one that Saros was pointing at, and told Rudius about, and Rudius was concerned about it. Well, are you gonna do anything about it? And he's like, no, we're not gonna do anything about it because there's no point in worrying. She was in there. She was in there waiting to arrive in this world, and I think it's because she was able to retain her body that she had to go through some very special system in order to arrive in this world. Whereas Rudius, he immediately went into a body. Like, they came into this world, she went up into that orb, and Rudius went flying over into a body and was born. Or went flying over into Zena's body, belly, and was born. But then it took this whole 10 years sitting there, maybe because it needed more mana. And maybe Rudius was the thing that was needed to come over and supply it that remaining amount of mana. And then suddenly, boom. So there's a possibility here that while the two almost seem like they are accidents, because it almost feels like in Rudius's mind that he might be a casualty to her being summoned there. So it almost kind of jumps back and forth with this mindset of, okay, was Rudius just happenstance because Nanahoshi was brought here? Was Nanahoshi brought here as happenstance for him being brought here? He doesn't want to mention to her that he was involved in that accident with her because he's afraid that she'll think that he caused it. But I think by combining my theories, it almost makes me think that either one of those boys was the original intended thing to be summoned. They're all just a casualty of a big summoning happening, and none of them are actually the intended target. Or Nanahoshi was a target, but they needed her whole body, so she had to be kind of summoned a special way. So Rudius was transported with her to provide a mana vessel, which would eventually finish the summoning of her with her whole self, her whole body and everything. The only thing that kind of throws a wrench in that mindset is that it doesn't indicate, based on Nanahoshi's story so far, that anybody has cared that she's there. Why wouldn't she have been confronted by the person that summoned her? So there's still a possibility that, again, that she's just an accident. But the only thing that kind of explains why she never appeared until the displacement, even though they both were involved in the accident at the same time, is if she was in there incubating or whatever, or inside this ball waiting to be finalized. Unless some part in this whole system, she was transported and sort of kept in a pocket of time before she finally arrived. There's no reason to believe that when they transport from this other world, our world, they both instantly arrive at the same time. She could have took more time to get over there and he got there quicker. Or the possibility that time works differently for the two worlds. So this truck's coming, it hits Rudius, slams into him, he dies, transports, and then maybe but again, it sort of implies that she disappeared at that moment. But there could have been a time difference there. That's kind of a dumb theory. Throw that out. I'll just leave it in here because why not? That was a dumb theory. Stupid theory, Andrew. I make stupid theories sometimes. I think most of my theories are genius. But some are crappy. Some are really stupid. Anyways, yes, the other part of the statement is the fact that she claims that she hasn't aged at all. Over these last 5 years, she's always looked the same. So it's like her body is paused in time. He's like, well, that sounds like a bit of a silver lining at least. She's like, I suppose it's preferable to growing old in a foreign land, at least. Which, yes, sadly does make perfect sense. I mean, the idea that she's doing well right now, But if she was this person that could age over time, eventually she got to an old age, she's not going to have much of a good life there. Because again, she doesn't have any family. She was this old, decrepit old lady that nobody would take care of in her deathbed. I don't know if there's any retirement homes in this world. At this point, Rudius recalls that when he was meeting with the man god, he's seen his old body there, and it wasn't aging. This is a interesting note there as well. I guess it kind of goes in line with my theory and the idea of that maybe that secludedness, but that was always kind of an indication of what was in his mind, that he's seen his old self because that was the image of himself. I don't know that's sort of going to tie in with this, but it's sort of, if Refugian is pointing this out, there's got to be a reason why the Refugian is pointing this out, so I'm going to put a pin in that one. He figured that was probably how it worked when those who visited from other worlds. I don't have the first idea of why I'm not getting older though. It's just bizarre. Well, just for the record, I'm aging normally so far. Right, I suppose the cause is something inherent to my body. I'll have to look into it if I get a chance. There might be something I can do about it. At this point, she starts to jot something down. Nanahoshi explained that she learned all about magic circles. It was made by pulverizing magic crystals and mixing powder and different ingredients to make paint. These ingredients varied based on the nature of the spell itself. Large-scale spells like King tier and above required unusual catalysts that typically needed the finance backing of a country to get what you needed. These paints were used to draw patterns. It would absorb in the surface, and then the mana poured into it would produce the specific effect. Then by general rule, the magic paint would typically disappear after a single use. Ryu speaks up. Do those teleportation circles in the ruins vanish after a single use too? No, they work differently. They were carved into place using a special technique. Apparently these days, using paint was the norm. But in the past, there was a variety of techniques that were used and lost in time, meaning you could technically carve it into stone and pump magic directly into it. Nanahoshi couldn't use this method, so she hadn't studied it, but it was widely used for creating magical implements. Again, this is another one of those moments where you're like, why are they stepping away from these old technologies? Why do they have these old techniques that seem to be a lot more logical, but they're walking away from it? Technically, yes, don't get me wrong, using paints makes sense if you're doing something once. But why wouldn't you use it for like a repeat use? Which I guess, yes, makes sense, the idea of using it to create magical implements. You're going to want to carve it in the ground because you're going to have to use it over and over and over again to create more and more implements. Whereas I guess, yes, it makes sense that if you're using a summon technique or something like that, you're not going to be needing to do it multiple times. And yes, if you're fighting in combat, you're not going to want to have to take out a chisel and start chiseling at the ground. You're going to want to paint it and get it done. But if time's not the issue, it makes sense that you'd want to carve it and not have to do it over and over again. Maybe if you were fortifying a defense in a kingdom and you know you're going to have to fire from a location, you'd want to set up some sort of fireball incantation thing and just put your mana into it. But yes, magic circles could be used for any sort of spell if you had the right method. The problem is that most of them were passed down orally and lost in time, and no one out there was capable of devising new ones. If you wanted to discover new magic circles, you had to find old scrolls, or stumble across engravings in ruins. This was how things were, until Nanahoshi arrived and shook things up. She analyzed patterns, drew up her own attempts, and performed experiments, and ended up creating her own new brand of patterns. Again, and it makes perfect sense when you think about it, when you start to get into what they're going to be doing here, what Rudius is going to be doing to help her out, it requires a lot of mana, it requires a lot of resources, and as we mentioned earlier, when it comes to certain paints and whatnot, and what certain circles, you required some extremely expensive stuff. Stuff that required the backing of an entire nation. It sort of makes sense why there's nobody out there that's devising new circles. It's too expensive, it's too costly, and it costs too much mana, it takes too much time. What they're about to do is change the circle. Try it again. Change it this way. Try it again. Over and over and over again, depleting a whole bunch of mana. And again, Rudius has a massive amount of mana. And as we'll see from Fitz trying to help as well, Fitz is only able to kind of try like 20 circles before he's spent. And if you think about this with some sort of, group of people trying to devise new circles, at some point you're going to realize it's not really worth it. Are we even getting anything done here? We're summoning an insect leg. Was that worth it? We spent all day and all we did was summon an insect leg. It makes sense to why a lot of people gave up. And even for Nanahoshi, until Rudius arrived, she was wasting tons of money, using magic crystals and stuff like that because she didn't have mana. She had to supply mana from other resources. And it probably cost her a ton. And she couldn't do it too fast because if she started buying up a bunch of resources, she was going to become an enemy of somebody because she's soaking up all the resources and they need this stuff. She was the first, seemingly, in this recent history of somebody pushing the limits of creating magical circles because she has a purpose. She wants to get home. Everybody else wouldn't see a point in it. It would be too costly, it'd be a waste of time. And yes, you could technically blow up an area. Rudius seen her as impressive. The more she talked, the more Rudius wanted to learn from her. However, she spoke up. I can't go handing out my information to anyone who asks. Let's make a deal. Rudius assumed that she was leading all this up to this point. I don't have any mana, or any means of defending myself. I don't get any older, but I'm fairly sure I'm not immortal. Right. I can't stand this world, honestly. None of it feels real to me. The food is just atrocious, their sense of morality is bizarre, and everything is incredibly inconvenient. Again, like a opposite to Rudius. He sees the inconvenience in a lot of stuff, but you know, they don't even have shampoo here for crying out loud. And more importantly, everyone I care about is back in our old world. I want to go back there so badly. What about you? I like this world a lot. Again, I love how different her experience in this world is. She's uncomfortable. And she would see a lot of the things that Rudius would giggle about as terrible. Think about it from Rudius' perspective. He's growing up in this world. Say he sees what's happening with the Grey Rat family, the Boreas Grey Rat family. When he goes there, he says that they have a bunch of maids and Soros is having his way with them and whatnot. And Rudius is going, man, I would love to do this. This seems cool. All the atrocious things he sees about like the treatment of certain people, she would see 100 times worse because he was still in that perverted mind and he sees how great it is. Whereas she would see it horrible. And again, the fact that she came here without mana, again, she says that everybody assumes that she has mana. She has 0. She has no potential of being a warrior because most fighters, sword fighters, as we find out, are using mana to cloak themselves in a battle aura. She can't even do that. She can't become a fighter. She can't become a mage. She can't really do anything. She could probably become an archer, but, you know, is she fast enough? Is she skilled enough? The doors all around her are closing. The only thing that she can really do is become financially successful, which, yes, is a route for her, but what is she going to use that money for? She sees no purpose in this world. It's bizarre. The moralities are bad. She doesn't like anything about it. Nothing about it is convenient. She wants to go back. And yes, the most important thing there, I want to go back to my loved ones. I have people waiting for me. I want to go back. But yes, Rudius says, I like this world a lot. And I've got more friends here than my old world. I don't want to go back. I see. You don't have family left behind then? I've got no regrets. He didn't even want to think of his old life. He already committed to doing his best here. Yes, he had painful moments, but he was satisfied with his new life. If someone tried to drag him back to it, he would not go without fighting. That's how dedicated he is to staying here. This is funny. I see. I suppose you must have had a good, long life. Sure. He's like, yes, I think she misinterpreted it, but he wasn't going to correct her. You and I clearly have different goals then, but we both have something to offer each other. So let's find a way of cooperating. Is there something I have you want? You said it earlier yourself. You have a world-class mana capacity, right? I'd like you to help me with my experiments. In exchange, I will teach you what you want to know. If you're looking for answers I don't have, then I'll do my best to find them. I know a lot of influential people, and I'm quite a skilled researcher. I'll also help you in any other way I can, of course. So you're looking for a give and take relationship then? That's right. Simple enough, really. I'll be curious how this whole thing kind of shapes up going forward, though, because if you think about it, what she's sort of providing Rudius right here is massive connections. She's met a lot of very influential people. She's talked about her entire year that she's traveled around with Orsted to many places using these teleportations. She's met all the biggest people. Using the name of Orsted, she's met pretty much, again, probably the only person that knows the deepest secrets of summoning. She knows people that would probably know exactly what Rudius needs to know. She has all the keys to what he needs. She's got money. She's got this plethora of knowledge under her belt. And she mentions later, I'll give it all to you the moment I leave. You can have it all. I don't want any of this stuff. I mean, she'd probably even say, you can take my whole fortune if you want. Take it all. I don't need it. I want to get out of here. That's all she wants to do. She was smart, resourceful. He doesn't know how he'd be able to help her, but maybe she has some sort of compassion for other fellow Earthlings. She did say that she was glad that she met another of her kind. Okay, sounds good to me. I accept. Glad to hear. Don't go change your mind later, all right? A man never goes back on his word. I have to say, it's kind of nice hearing a Japanese cliche again. I know what you mean. Nobody gets any of my references over here. Like, every time he tells these stupid jokes and everybody looks at him like, what are you talking about, Rudius? Finally, a kinship is developing here. Which, yes, gets into Fitz/Sylphie later. Now things get very interesting. She cleared her throat and then pulled 3 rings out of her pocket and put them on. Shall we get right to it then? Is there something you want to ask me? I've heard you're looking into the displacement incident. Who told you that? He shot a glance at Fitz, who was sulking and tilted his head to the side. What is it, Rudius? Is something wrong? We're going to talk about the displacement incident now. Nanahoshi, would you mind speaking in human tongue for this? All right then. Now, take note. This entire time, they've been talking in Japanese. Fitz has no context as to what they've been talking about. Keep that in mind. Nanahoshi continues. I don't know the specifics of why the disaster took place. However, it closely coincided with the moment that I arrived in this world. The incident was probably a side effect caused by whatever brought me here. In effect, it happened because of me. This was a huge surprise to Rudius. Summoning and teleportation were similar in many ways. Yes, this goes back to my whole theory that I was talking about, the fact that they both are similar in color, so it's possible that a summon happened, that was the original intent, but then the release of mana caused a displacement incident. She was summoned when they were teleported. In the end, Rudius was relieved that the disaster wasn't related to his arrival. Still not sure, Rudius. Again, going back to my theory and the idea that it's possible that, yes, he was brought there originally and she was incubated and he was put into a body, but there's still a possibility that he was brought to in order to be a vessel of mana. Now, while Rudius was surprised, again, that's the only thing that Fitz understood. And so Fitz jumped up and charged at Nanahoshi, swinging his arms. I'll kill you! Nanahoshi lifted up one of her arms, and one of the rings on her fingers shone brightly. Fitz's spell failed. Fitz then leapt towards Nanahoshi, throwing punches. A second ring shone, and his fist bounced off this barrier. Do you have any idea how much we suffered? My mother and father died because of you. Nanahoshi speaks up. Don't stand there, Rudius Grey Rat. Do something. Reese jumped up and grabbed Fitz. Calm down, Master Fitz. Are you serious, Rudius? She just admitted it was her fault. How could you be so calm? You suffered too, didn't you? Reese had never seen Fitz like this. Normally he was cool-headed, and now he was losing all control. It made sense. He lost loved ones, and he was now confronted with the one that was responsible. But Rudius knew it wasn't Nanahoshi's fault. They were in the same place when they were summoned. But he had no idea why she appeared 10 years later. Then he realized they had been talking in Japanese the whole time. Fitz had no context. I'm sorry, we didn't explain it clearly enough. She didn't come here at her own free will. Master Fitz, she was a victim too. A victim? Wait, really? Nanahoshi replied, I'm sorry, I could have phrased that more carefully. It wasn't my intention to upset you. That's alright, I apologize for jumping to conclusions. There was still a fierce look in Fitz's eyes, but he got himself under control. Reese assumed at this point that Nanahoshi probably took those rings out to protect herself from Rudius. She had some guts, but those were some nice trinkets. He wanted a set. I like thinking to myself, yeah, depending on how many times they can be used, some really nice little trinkets there. Again, Rudius's weakness is the fact that he is a glass cannon, and that would protect him. Nanahoshi doesn't have any ability. She has no mana. Those rings are all she has. Anyways, I don't know much more about the incident itself. I was summoned here because of it, but I have no idea who made it happen, what their motives were, or why it led to such an enormous disaster. No one does. Again, this is from the perspective of somebody that has traveled around and asked all the most genius of minds. Nobody knows. Orsa didn't have any theories either. No, he just said that it was unprecedented. At this point, Rudius... this was a huge blow for Rudius. He figured if Orsted couldn't figure it out, then he would never either. The man god did say that it was Orsted's fault, but he does acknowledge that Orsted has this curse that makes everybody hate him. And yes, he thought that man god is probably under those effects, which again, it was another one that was kind of theorizing with the 6th volume. With the feud going on between them, maybe he just wanted to blame Orsted by default. But yes, it sort of does kill a theory that Rudius could be having at this point that Orsted caused it. But again, it doesn't seem like that. Orsted's seen the incident, he came there, found her, and was like, all right, I'll protect you. It almost makes me feel like Orsted is like a Rizard, just kind of traveling around, finding people deserted out in the middle of nowhere and helping them find their way home. Orsted is secretly Rizard's friend, his brother from another mother. It was hard to imagine that Orsted was involved. I mean, just to summon somebody and then spend their time helping them return, it didn't make any sense. Why did you say that it happened because of you then? Well, I did, in a sense. All I wanted to do is get that fact out of the way right away. I didn't want anyone using it as an excuse to turn against me later. It made sense that she would clear it up right now rather than having Rudius figure that out later and then jump conclusions. Though he does realize that it could just be that she and Orsted are just really skilled liars. That's a shame though. I was hoping that you would have some ideas of what happened. I'm afraid not. But I do plan on moving forward with my research. If your research progresses far enough, do you think that you'll figure out the truth behind the displacement incident? I should be able to explain what happened on a theoretical level, at least. But to make that happen, I'll need a great deal of mana. I see. I guess I am the man of your dreams then. Yeah. Yes, I suppose so. Okay, Nanahoshi. I need a little time to think about this. I'll come back and see you in a few days, okay? Let's work out the specifics then. All right then. I'll see you then. Later, Rudius explained the whole thing about Nanahoshi and pretty much everything they talked about in Japanese to Fitz. Again, another thing to note here, because they were speaking in Japanese that whole time, Fitz, or Sylphie, if we're implying that, never heard anything about Rudius admitting that he was transported too. So Fitz/Sylphie, if possible, doesn't know that, didn't hear any of the admittance that he was transported. I'll be curious if that's something that possibly Nanahoshi later in his many visits to Nanahoshi and Fitz going there as well, if Nanahoshi would slip that out. But so far, right now, only Nanahoshi knows that Rudius is an isekai. Fitz speaks up. Anyways, Rudius, what do you think of her? Rudius obviously understood Nanahoshi due to their similar situation, but the whole situation is probably outlandish to Fitz. Nanahoshi obviously didn't care about this world or what happened to its people, but she had nothing but success while here. But maybe that was trivial to her. Rudius wasn't going to brag about his work, but he didn't like her attitude. To be honest, there's something about her I don't like very much, but I do think she's relatively trustworthy. Okay, that's good then. Fitz smiled awkwardly. Rudius thought maybe that Fitz would have lectured him on trusting people too easily. Yes, sure, Rudius. That's definitely why Fitz is asking about this. You know, the entire time Fitz was jealous because you were talking so friendly to this person and you had this deep connection. It's obvious from Fitz's perspective, he's watching this happening. It's technically talked about in the next chapter. Fitz is watching this whole thing happening and Rudius is very familiar with her because he immediately has a bond. Like, he immediately establishes this similarity between the two of them. His whole knowledge of his past life is something that she knows about him. So it's obvious that that's going to be something that's going to be really quickly creating a bond and a trust between the two of them. And Fitz probably sees that, but doesn't know why it's there. Were you worried about me, Master Fitz? Thanks. No, I wasn't worried about anything, but you're welcome anyways, I guess. In any case, Nanahoshi and Rudius had now established a tentative relationship. There were still dozens of questions that Rudius had to ask her, but he just have to work his way down the list one by one. And that is the end of chapter 6, question mark? I lost track right now. Yes, chapter 6. I'm not going to get into Sylphie's side story now. I kind of assumed that these two chapters were going to be so much for me to dig through because I was theorizing the entire damn time going through them, but really crazy set of chapters. Like I said before, this is the stuff I eat up. This is the stuff that makes one of these volumes so much more incredible than the other ones. I love when this writer takes what you think is normal, takes that foundation you've sort of gotten comfortable with, and shakes it up. Smacks it with a sledgehammer, busts it on with a jackhammer, and then you're going, wait. Yeah, it makes sense. But now I have a million more questions. Again, like I said before, I love that I finally have the answer to who Nanahoshi is. Love that I have that answer to my theory on the idea that it is this girl that Rudius met in his previous life, or not met, but seen in this previous life that was involved in the accident with him. But then it starts creating the questions of why was she not transported the same time he was? Again, Orsted was alone. He found her after the displacement. She admitted to being brought there by the displacement. And now why different times? Was she stuck in this orb that Rudius seen before the displacement incident? Why was she stuck in that orb? Why was she brought in her own body? What's the purpose in her being in her own body? is the reason that she's in this body, and this body is possibly immortal, not aging, is because she was brought there for the purpose of being a vessel for something, a vessel for Laplace. Who knows? There's a million possibilities that are going through my head right now, and I don't know which one could possibly hit. I could throw a million theories out right now, and it would just never end. I love that stuff. I love when this writer does that, to shake that foundation and make me beg a million questions. But yeah, crazy 2 chapters. Easily my favorite 2 chapters in a long time. I will be curious if we end up finding out that these 2 that Nanahoshi was with when she was transported end up actually being somebody that Rudius has actually already met. I don't know. Again, the assumption is that they would either have to be transported in their actual bodies, and some in the same way that Nanahoshi was, for them to retain their bodies and thus look like Japanese students or whatever, which I think would stand out more to Rudius. If it was somebody that Rudius already met, but he didn't recognize they were actually isekais, they would have to be somebody that was reborn in the world just like he was, which would mean they probably, again, assuming they had the same effect happen to them and not them be born at a different time, they would be about the same age as him, which would only really imply somebody like Cliff or somebody, which I don't necessarily see because he hasn't given any indication that he's been isekai unless his memories were wiped. It could be somebody like, I know the only person that came to mind was Soldat, but I think Soldat's quite a bit older than Rudius. He might be around the same. I don't know if they ever mentioned his age, but he did seem like he was older than Rudius. Possibility, but I don't think so. Going on the theory that they might actually take on the same route as Nanahoshi, which in changing their names, but making it still similar in a way that she'd be able to tell, like actually go by the meaning of the names themselves. I don't know. A quick search, it implied that technically Akato means bright person, which maybe, this is like a shot in the dark, crazy theory here. The only person with bright in their name was technically Arumamfi, who was one of the people that was working for Petagoose, which I don't necessarily would be the case because he's been around Petagoose for a long time, I believe. So unless that whole time aspect is so off, that wouldn't work out. But I don't know. It was a random thought, was to look into each of their names and see what they mean. They're mostly like knowledge, and one was like Black Tree or something like that. I don't know necessarily that we've seen any characters with a tree in the name or something like that. So I don't know. That theory might be out the door, but it's still kind of interesting to think there's these 2. One, I would assume, maybe 2, that have been transported to this world as well, and one of these 2 might be that person. And the curious thought is, has Rudius actually run into these people? Or again, later on, will he eventually run into them? And what will their circumstances be? Will they be isekais? Will they be body transfers? Or, bigger question, what were they transferred for? Are they bad? Are they good? Will be the big question mark. So I'll be really curious in the future if and when he does run into one of these 2. Or if they're even still alive. They might be just dead. Especially if they have the same circumstances as Nanahoshi. Because I think one of the more curious and interesting aspects of Nanahoshi is her different circumstance here. Unlike Rudius, gaining knowledge, gaining combat experience, having this mana pool, she has nothing. She is without mana. She's just a husk. Which, again, does technically apply the idea of wondering if she was supposed to be a vessel for something like Laplace. Because she has this body that seems to not age, and then having something implanted into her possess her would make sense. Was she just brought here to just be an unaging body and then have something placed into it that has power? Would make sense. Otherwise, it makes no sense why she's even there. And it does give into like the hardships that she's facing, which I kind of feel this idea that she had everything that she wanted and she did enjoy her past life. And she's the opposite in Rudius in having that life that she felt was better stolen from her. Whereas Rudius was just given another chance, and this is a chance that he actually likes. He's been enjoying, and he's been growing and getting better and maturing and experiencing new things, and never had anything that he doesn't care about what he left behind. So it's kind of a heartbreaking aspect to see this other side of the situation. And I think that kind of is this interesting thing that Nanahoshi provides to the story. What if it wasn't Rudius? What if it was somebody that did want to stay there and had that ripped from them? It kind of breaks my heart for Nanahoshi herself and what she's going through. And I'll be curious if going forward you'll get more into her mindset and the idea of how much this hurts for her. Or again, how much she really wants to re-meet that person that she left behind. So we'll see. But again, really cool to see, despite not having any potential, despite in this world's context not having potential, only having knowledge. Now, knowledge can get her a lot of places. It's obviously gotten her places. It's gotten her this great esteem and this recognition by the world itself and money and wealth. But she doesn't want that. She wants her family. She wants what she left behind. And so again, seeing that driving force of her, despite not having talent that Rudius would see you needing and the world would see you needing. And like I said, everybody assumes I have mana. I don't have that. So she had to find her own path. And she did it. And through Rudius' perspective, she did it so much better than I did. She took that knowledge and applied it and made wealth. I've done nothing in compared to her. Despite, by this world standards, he's more talented. Anyways, that is chapter 5 and 6 of volume 9. I hope you guys enjoyed this Mushoku Mondays. As usual, I greatly appreciate your guys' support and your ongoing support. Thanks to everybody that hits that like button. Please hit the like button. It helps out the algorithms, all that good stuff. Make sure to leave a comment if it's not disabled, which is probably disabled. I apologize for it being disabled if it is. But you can definitely jump onto the Discord. We have a Mushoku Monday channel. The link to Discord is in the description. So if you do want to chat about this, you can go there and put them in spoiler tags. I wish that YouTube would have spoiler tags. YouTube. Additionally, if you want to support the channel more and you're able to and you're willing to, we have a Patreon link, a tips link, super thanks, and membership button down below. I greatly appreciate everybody that supports the channel. Your guys' contributions mean so much to me. It keeps this going, keeps the lights on, as the joke goes. Keeps me able to do this as a full-time job and providing content to you guys. And again, it means so much to me. But with that said, until the next Mushoku Mondays, y'all take care. Maybe it was trivial to her. That's all right. I apologize for jumping to conclusions. We might end up eventually, along her travels with our, eventually, along her meetings, eventually, he's literally just saying their trouble. Securing connections with powerful Asuran merchants to arrange and distribution of she secured connections with powerful Asuran merchants to arrange for distribution routes. She secured connections with powerful Asuran. She secured power. You shouldn't scream at someone. You shouldn't scream at someone. You shouldn't scream at the side of someone's face. Crying out, why Orsted? Crying out in his mind, why Orsted? He wanted to meet him in another reincarnation. After all of his boosted confidence, but after hearing Fitz speak. Yeah, I found out about them from the vice principal. I found out he'd probably end up repeating the same I'm not the brightest, I'm not the sharpest tool in this dead. I'm not the sharpest tool, I'm not the sharpest, man, I'm just not the smartest person in the world right now, right? I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed. I'm not the sharpest tool in this shit.